Perfect. So today, once again on Voice Out Wednesdays with Varuni, we are present on Voice of Crypto, the number one podcast in the Web3 crypto and blockchain space. And as you guys know that every Wednesday we get really interesting guests from the Web3 crypto blockchain space. And today, yet again, we have a really special guest from this space. We have with us Mr. Raj Brahmbhatt. He is the founder and CEO of Cebu. He is an accomplished financial executive passionate about disrupting the traditional finance space through innovating and emerging technologies. We're really happy to have you here, Raj.
Thanks for having me, and thanks to the listeners for joining and giving their time of the day.
Big shout out to our listeners who've joined today. I think, Raj, my first question to all my guests generally is how did you sort of travel into the space of Web3? And when we were growing up some 10 years back, one decade from now, there wasn't any Web3. Bitcoin was hardly present. So, I mean, how did you sort of think about getting into this space, emerging technologies? How did this grab your attention? And a little bit about what you're currently doing, what your background is.
Sure, absolutely. So my involvement with, I guess, Web three. I mean, I'm not a big believer in the term Web three because the internet is still static.
Yeah.
But my involvement with, let's say, the blockchain technologies and crypto space as a whole, on a personal level, started during the pandemic actually because I researched quite a bit on my free time. And I was already managing quite a large securities portfolio and kind of started tapping into crypto. It was obviously on a speculative level, fun to do. Made some good returns there, so it was cool on a personal level. That's how I got involved. But on a commercial level, so the beginning of my career started at a venture fund, right? At a very traditional capacity as a principal for pre-seed to Series B investments, right? During that time, I started also exploring one of the partner companies for the venture fund, which is telco, um, wholesale voice and SMS carrier, right?
Right.
And I noticed that settlements were taking anywhere up to 96 hours in emerged markets and even 16 days to a month in unemerged markets, right? That is with banking delays, forex exchange rates,
Hmm.
and getting approval from central authorities in their respective governments, right? So, like I said, that period of 96 hours in emerged markets and 16 days to a month in unemerged markets just didn't
Yeah.
sit right with me, right? Because for telcos specifically, uh, wholesale voice and SMS carriers, the margins are pretty low. They can average to about 4.5%. Um, right. So having on hand liquidity and being able to produce volume is very,
Hmm.
very important to them, and especially for the tier two and tier three carriers, they usually have low liquidity, which is why they get into a big issue in the market today, which is liquidity crunch, right? And it has been leading to a lot of these carriers failing and
Hmm.
consolidating in order to still sustain in the market. So at that time, I kind of identified Zebu as a concept, right, where we are streamlining these long payment delays and
Right.
kind of trying to skip over the recurring exchange rates
Hmm.
uh, and fiat transfer, and we're bringing that settlement time down to 30 seconds to 10 minutes per transaction, right? And we're limiting the amount of times customers have to do fiat on ramps and off ramps, right? We the way we've created our technology stack is we can do value transfer with our native utility token, which is the Zebu
Hmm.
token, but they can have a running balance in a stable coin. So
Yeah.
they don't have to bear the volatility of ERC20 or BEP20 based token.
Yeah.
So that's how I got involved into blockchain technologies as a whole on a professional basis. So
And that is how you came up with the idea of Zebu, if I'm not wrong.
yes, that's right.
So did you sort of see the telecom industry meet with the telecom, the centralized finance industry sort of meet with decentralized finance, and when these industries sort of converged, what sort of a significant impact did you yourself see, and how far are we still from that shift that we're talking about, from centralized finance to decentralized, or would it even be a shift, Raj? Because I think, I don't know, what are your thoughts? Would it go hand in hand? Would it be a shift?
So, I mean, I spend quite a bit of time, or I have, not anymore maybe, in kind of hearing out these Twitter threads and people having their revolutionary opinions about the great shift, right? I mean, I don't see it happening. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely see a lot of components from decentralized finance being integrated into centralized,
Mm,
mostly on the basis of security and automation of transactions,
right.
right? But other than that, there's definitely, like I mentioned, security and automation are the biggest um, benefits of decentralized finance, wherein maybe the decisions of a centralized authority doesn't have to affect the services you use, such as Bitcoin, right? I mean, there's no one controlling Bitcoin, but at the same time, there is people
Yeah.
controlling Bitcoin. It's not
Hmm.
truly decentralized, is it?
Yeah.
If you look at the supply, it's held by a lot of quote
Yeah.
unquote whales. Let's say they do a market dump, whatever amount of Bitcoin asset you have in your wallet
Yeah.
devalues instantly. So, um, sure, yeah, on the basis of security and automation, decentralized finance is great and amazing, and I
Mm,
absolutely do see those components being added into centralized finance. That's
yeah.
essentially what we've done here at Zebu, right? So, a bit of background on, or to work you guys through the flow of how the product works is. Um, So maybe I can give you a bit of background on the industry itself, right? So do you know what telecom wholesale voice and SMS carriers are?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard about it.
Okay. So a lot of the people in the audience probably have a big question mark on their face right now. So maybe I can walk them through it. So where are you based?
I am currently based out of India, but
India.
our audience is based out of the US,
Yeah.
UK, parts of Europe.
So let's say a very popular retail operator, retail service provider for voice and SMS in India would be Vodafone, and
Yeah, or
over in
maybe Reliance, if you talk
or
about.
yeah,
Yeah.
or Reliance, yeah, or and if you go over to the U.S., it would be AT&T or Verizon,
Yeah.
right? So now let's say you as a Vodafone or a Reliance user make an international call over to an AT&T user in the U.S. They're
Mm,
not directly interconnected, so they can't
yeah.
link calls, right? So there's multiple wholesale voice and SMS carriers
Hmm.
that are in that route that take that traffic, give it to each other, and ultimately terminate it over to AT&T in the US, and then AT&T reroutes it to the person receiving that call. So this
Yeah.
whole process happens in those, those 3 to 4 beeps you hear every
Yeah.
dial. You hear a couple extra ones when you're making a global call, right?
Yeah.
So this whole thing is happening end to end during those few beeps. So considering that, the service is pretty real time, right?
Hmm.
You may have experienced. The settlements have not been.
Yeah.
That's the
Absolutely.
problem I identified. So, in order to streamline those settlements as well, we came up with the Zebu platform
Hmm.
where, let's say, I am a wholesale voice and SMS carrier, so are you, right? Both of us have our own business arrangements off of the platform that, let's say, I'll give you $1 million worth of traffic, minute traffic
Yeah.
over the next month, right? And then there's a 60-day payment period. Um, let's say the quality is good, everything is good,
Hmm.
we don't have any disputes, right? It's as simple as if I owe you $100,000, you just have to generate an invoice of $100,000, post it to the platform, input my customer ID, shows up on my interface, right?
Yeah.
And with a one-click interaction, I can draw down fiat from my bank account, credit card, debit card, or even crypto. I can just link my own crypto wallet to the platform
Hmm.
because it's all non-custodial in nature. Us at Zebu, we do not take custody of your funds.
Yeah.
Um, so um, let's say your balance has came in and it instantly gets swapped for the Zebu native token,
Hmm.
uh, and I send that over to you since you generated the invoice. Now you
Yeah.
have a preset method of receiving funds, which can be stable coins such as USDC or even
Got it.
fiat. USDC, we deliver that real time, right?
Hmm.
Now you have a running balance of USDC. You don't have to wait for fiat on ramp on the
Yeah.
platform. You can just keep making payments, right? Or you can choose to receive it in fiat. Even that we can provide
Hmm.
within 1 to 2 days because as of now we're supporting about 36 currencies.
Sweet.
So by doing that, we are also enabling a lot of the unemerged markets, right?
Hmm.
Because the staple in the industry today is the euro and the US
Absolutely.
dollar, and
Absolutely.
a lot of the unemerged markets don't actually have access to the euro and the US
Yeah.
dollar. So we're giving them the opportunity to do the conversion once,
Hmm.
skip multiple conversions of
Those
foreign
steps.
dollars,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
we're streamlining the whole process end to end.
Hmm. Pretty decent. So I see this as a lot of time saving, a lot of efforts and money. And of
Mhm.
course, this was all possible by the use of blockchain technology. If we talk about asset tokenization, though, what are some of the key advantages that you see of asset tokenization compared to the traditional asset ownership models that we've seen up until now?
Sure, absolutely. I really see asset tokenization's focus on illiquid assets, such as, let's say, music, or music is my favorite. I mean, real
Hmm.
estate and
Yeah.
um, music, right? But music is really my favorite to go after because it's the master rights or the publishing rights of a piece of music. It's a virtual asset almost, right? It can be. The transfer of ownership is fairly easier than real estate because real estate laws can vary around the world, but with music, you can create a much more efficient model.
Yeah.
So let's take music for an example. Um, if you tokenize, let's say, Taylor Swift's album, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we all know how amazing she's doing right now, as far as the economics goes.
Yeah.
Um, Last I heard, she's making 13 million a night from the store store.
I
So
was
she's
reading that she gave her truck drivers a gift of 100,000 US dollars, and now they're just struggling to work around their taxes. So,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know the extent of it.
So let's take Taylor Swift for an example, right? Let's say I tokenized her music 2 years
Yeah.
ago. Um, let's say the music's value is $10 million,
Hmm.
right? I tokenized it into 10 different pieces. This is just a complete example. Each, so 10% a token, 10% ownership per token. I can distribute those 10 tokens with 10 people, right?
Hmm.
With an initial sale. And let's say she produces $500,000 in royalties annually
Hmm.
on that music, right?
Hmm.
So that 500,000 will be split into pro rata basis per
Yeah.
token holder. So each one of them gets $50,000
Absolutely.
annually, right? So I kind of like to look at it like a bond, wherein it could have a
Hmm.
maturity rate
Makes
plus
sense.
dividends, right? So these would be pure securities. There's no way
Hmm.
around it. I mean, if anyone
Absolutely.
tries to say that asset tokenization is not a security, I don't believe them, right? So these would be pure securities, and
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense because it gives access to retail investors to liquid assets that they've never had the opportunity to invest in,
Yeah.
right? The current alternative investments are limited to, let's say, gold, oil, private equity, right?
Yeah.
But this really opens up the alternative investments market entirely.
Hmm.
Same goes with real estate, but real estate's a
Yeah.
bit more difficult, right? Because
Yeah.
um, valuation laws, taxation laws, maintenance, everything is different all around the world. So for real estate, I mean, as long as the asset owner is willing to take the liability, it could still work. Absolutely.
Makes sense. But even if you talk about digital real estate, or like you rightly pointed out, that entertainment as a sector is in fact seeing a lot of asset tokenization, just a lot of use of NFTs, and that's probably also because the kind of audience that these sectors serve are more paceable in terms of this sort of a technology, which is sort of more. I wouldn't say it's more old school. It is rather new age. So I mean, what sort when you see this sort of a shift happening, or the revolution of asset tokenization taking place, what sort of challenges do you anticipate in the widespread adoption? Because even now we see that a certain section of the society is essentially the one that's using or accessing these technologies, or is open to that sort of a shift.
So, I mean, really, the model I explained is what I believe in the most, right? That
Hmm.
tokenization is pure securities. It has to be, right? Because let's say I
Yeah.
bought that 10% of the Taylor Swift's music.
Hmm.
Now, the person that sold me that 10% um, made a sale of an asset, and the token
Hmm.
is backed by that asset, right? And let's say they aren't giving me dividends and I have to go to court. What do I have there to hold up? Not an NFT, right? So it needs to be a proper sale of a security, because if I go to court to try to get my money out of them, I can't show them a monkey on a phone, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe an NFT. So yeah, that's really my opinion on it.
No, makes sense. Also, I'm sure that you must have, now that we spoke about securities, you must have in depth gone through the Ripple versus SEC case and Ripple's partial victory, or as touted by a lot of media houses, Ripple's iconic victory in the case. What was your take on that? And were you sort of anticipating this? How do you think this certain regulatory decision has impacted this space? Will it sort of be like a light bearer for the cases that are to come? So, how do you see this case impacting the the space itself?
Look, I mean, so let me quickly talk big picture, right?
Hmm.
Um, the way I've seen the shift in the industry as far as kind of crypto utility tokens goes,
Yeah.
um, I have seen that over the past few years, the market was flooded with 90 to 95% of the market was flooded with what you call meme coins, right?
Yeah.
That's essentially tokens that only derive their value based on supply and demand, and the supply and demand is only generated through speculative motives,
Hmm.
right? That traders produce. Um, of course, there's the 5% that actually might have some utility, also. Now, the SEC's problem really should be with that 95%, right?
Makes
Um,
sense.
but they can't really prove those securities either. They're just they're more like commodities in a sense.
Yeah.
It's like it's so it's similar to rice maybe. But now coming back to the Ripple case, actually, so the way it has played out, we foresaw that almost a year ago, right? Because we have one of the best securities legal team over in the
Yeah.
U.S. and they really walked us through the right steps, right?
Mm.
I mean,
Makes sense.
granted, our business model is really away from that 95% that I just explained to you, right?
Yeah.
And that was helpful as well. But um, they essentially explained to us how secondary sales really are investments, right? Because you're producing an investment contract.
Mm.
Most of these sales happen on a private placement basis, so there's some discounting as well. So it's an
Absolutely.
investment contract. So if you can't just give an investment contract to any regular investor,
Yeah.
they especially in the U.S. I mean, they have to be accredited or institutional under Reg D. And then, as an American company, you can also do sales under Regulation S,
Yeah.
which is Americans outside of the U.S. Right. So one of the things we did identify during the Ripple case that kind of suggests that tokens are securities. This is just pure interpretation, right? Again, I cannot give legal advice by any means, but that some burning programs that almost seem like are driving the token price higher for the sake of driving the token price higher
Yeah.
and nothing else
Mm,
could entail that that token is a security, right? So at Zebu, we're pretty far from that. We
mm,
do sort of have a burning program, but the purpose really isn't to drive the token price higher. The way we've done our burning mechanism is we're doing it on a redemption basis, right? So let's say the Zebu token's price right now is $1, complete assumption. Um, I owe you $100,000.
mhm.
So on the platform, if I initiate a transaction, send you $100,000 equivalent of Zebu tokens, right? That entire $100,000 equivalent, as soon as you redeem it on your end, gets burnt off entirely.
Got it.
So we're looking at more at it more like airline points than an
Mm,
asset, right? So
yeah.
as soon as the utility is recovered, the tokens are burnt off entirely.
Mm,
Um, so that's the idea. And then along with that, we are minting about 20% of the transaction, so
mm,
simply to fulfill the loyalty and rewards we're fulfilling, what we're providing, some platform costs, right?
got it.
We are also giving some to our invoice validators. So
Mm,
we're going to have users that can validate the invoices that come onto the platform. And additionally, um, in our roadmap, we are actually also planning on getting a banking license, right? So we can provide instant settlement accounts to all of our users so that fiat on ramp and off ramp time that it takes right now is essentially nullified, right? You'll be able to instantly do fiat on ramp and off ramps, and people won't even have to keep their balances in stablecoin if they wish. So after that, we are actually planning on doing a factoring service on the platform. So insured receivable financing. So let's say since me and you had a 60-day contract for the payment and
mm,
you don't want to wait that 60 days, right? You can be insured up to 95%. So you can essentially post your invoice, essentially, and right away initiate the factoring process and receive $95,000, right? The factoring service takes 5,000 because you are only insured up to 95, and then maybe we can work out some sort of a release plan, right? As soon as the factoring service gets paid themselves, um, and so for which some of our minted tokens would be
mm.
used in that staking group specifically, right? So yeah, that's
So Raj, I did have a question from you're already ensuring quite a bit of security for users, but from a founder or a builder point of view, what sort of do you have any
sorry.
concerns that,
Sorry, you just cut out for the past like 5 7 seconds.
all right. So, how do you, as a founder, address concerns regarding security? And there are still quite a few regulatory aspects around decentralized finance solutions. And are there any best practices that you can recommend to people or to founders as a founder yourself? And how do you sort of address certain regulatory and security issues?
So, look, I mean, as someone that is trying to run a legit service and business, I mean, for example, right now we are partnered with 7 users, right? 7 companies, and we have in our pipeline 89 more, right?
Yeah.
That are getting their KYB done. We're helping their accounts and treasury teams get used
Hmm.
to the platform entirely because these are pretty legacy companies. So this is a very new concept to them. So helping them understand it is very, very important. And we are expecting to do about $1.5 billion worth of settlements over the next 8 to 12 months,
Hmm.
and even 9 to 15 billion over the next 5 years. Right. So from the position I stand in, what I value, one of the things I value most, compliance wise, number one, would be having your KYB/KYC policies very, very strong, and also your anti money laundering policy, right? Your AML policy, and your service providers for those services. as well.
Yeah.
Um, as far as cybersecurity goes, I mean, CertIC is pretty good for your smart contracts, and then
Hmm.
there's many third-party auditors for the platform, smart
Yeah.
contracts as well, right? And what was your third question? Sorry.
How do you ensure, like, what sort of advice do you have for people who are entering this space when it comes to security issues?
So that's about it, right? I mean, partner with, have a good compliance officer and
Hmm.
cybersecurity officer on board if you can. Um, Focus on your KYB, KYC, AML
Yeah.
policies and its implementation. And along with that, try to go with the best third party cybersecurity auditing and
Hmm.
implementation teams.
I also checked that when I was checking out your profile, Raj. I saw that you're also a mentor in the blockchain space. So, as a mentor, what sort of advice do you give to fintech entrepreneurs or just Web3 entrepreneurs? I mean, I'm sure there would be quite a
Uh,
few wanting to leverage from that information right now.
yeah. So number one would be don't make a meme token.
And
It's
yet,
a,
there's so many who are dreaming of doing that all the time.
yeah. I mean, look, I mean, if you're going to spend your time doing something, spend it while adding value to yourself and
Yeah.
to society, right? That's what we're trying to do here at Zebu. Um, you create a meme token, it'll be a hit, whatever. You can artificially play with it, whatever, right? But after a month's time, you produce nothing real. And you are actually very, very likely to lose a good bit of money if your tokenomics aren't right. Right. So it's really not worth it, in my opinion. Like again at Zebu, we're doing a true utility. We're using the same smart contract that
Yeah.
anyone else would use, but we have proper application. So if you're going to use blockchain, which is such a good technology for security automation, right? There's plenty of utilities today that need to be fulfilled in multiple industries around the world. So that's what I would pursue if I was a brand new entrepreneur. That's exactly what I would go for.
And lastly, I mean, we've seen that around last year, cryptocurrencies, NFTs were the it word for the year. And this year, we saw the sudden boom in AI and AI-driven tools or products. Yeah, I know. But yet, so do you have faith in this emerging technology? How do you think it will play out with blockchain? Would there be a sort of convergence between the two technologies? And other than AI, is there any other technology, emerging technology, that you're really keen on and are sort of watching closely?
So, I mean, non fungible tokens, right? Very good technology. Makes a lot of sense when applied well. Its application so far, I'm not completely in agreement with.
Hmm.
Right, some of the artwork is good, but let's say board ape NFTs,
Yeah,
not sure where that price and demand is coming from. But
yeah. I can,
I don't want to comment on that too much.
there's some things you just can't justify.
Yeah, and as far as AI goes, I mean, look, I mean, it's 2023. Technology has advanced quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
You look at smart contracts and artificial intelligence today. We have some of the best automation tools on our hands, right? We can make simple tasks a lot more efficient. Grunt work can be avoidable, and the applications are available, right?
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. Lastly, we're almost towards the end of our time, and my last question would be, what are your three most crucial pieces of advice that you give beginners in this space right before they're entering? And we're talking about noobs, complete noobs. So, what would your three pieces of advice for them be?
let me think. I mean, I've unloaded quite a bit already, right? But
Yeah.
look, I mean, just find the right partners if you're gonna come into the crypto
Yeah.
slash blockchain industry. Find the right partners, right? I mean, my co-founders right now, the partner company Bankai Group. They so my co-founder Raghav, he's the CMO, ex Google, Harvard alumni, right?
Hmm.
Marketing. He's the one who got me on this podcast today.
Mm.
uh, along with Keshav Pandya. He's the COO, um, manages the overall operations for Zebu, designed the product end to end himself, and he has also worked quite a bit on increasing the business intelligence as far as the
Mhm.
industry landscape goes for the
Yeah.
team, right? So that bit, along with Bankai Group, it's one of the largest telecom carriers in the world, right? Does about
Mm.
$2 billion in revenue, roughly,
Yeah.
and they are the ones kind of really helping us onboard these users. So this is our almost USP, right? That we've created this whole incredibly um, efficient and streamlined platform for settlements where uh, nothing really has changed for the users. It's almost like using their good old payments and banking platforms, but with crypto and blockchain technologies. And along with that, we also have Bankai Group opening a lot of doors for us and helping us onboard users, right? So that's really our USP, where competitors really would not be able to compete with us quite that well. So like I said, number one advice would be get the right partners. That's very,
Yeah.
very important. Number two would be make sure there is a need for your product, right?
Mhm.
Before you
Yeah.
make the product, before you sell the product, and before you spend money after it or raise for it, make sure there's a true need. Um, Pretty wide statement, but if I dive into that, we'll spend another 30 minutes. Uh, and then a third would be, I mean, just manage your treasury well,
Yeah.
which is your crypto assets and fiat assets, right? The way you're spending it, the way you've allocated your tokenomics. Make sure if you're giving it out to teams and if you're doing secondary sales that are off of the exchanges, that you have a proper cliff investing period on there. Really work on that on those tokenomics. Otherwise, it can really, really hurt your business.
Yeah.
So those would be my three advices.
Absolutely. Don't just have a token for the sake of having a token. And I do kind of agree with your second advice as well. Three really great pieces of advice. But a lot of people say this about the crypto space, that there are a lot of solutions to problems that don't exist. So make sure there's the right demand for your product in the market. And I would like to congratulate you, Raj, for working so well on the Zebu project. And big shout out to your team and yourself. Hope our listeners go ahead and check them out. Thank you for joining us. It was a really interesting and insightful session for me, and I'm sure for our audiences as well. And
So I just want to leave a quick message. At Zeba, we're actually launching. The platform is live. We're doing test transactions right now. We've already raised about $25 million through secondary sales of the token. That's how we fulfilled our soft cap and hard cap. And along with that, to stay updated with Zebu, what we are all about, and what we are coming out with on an everyday basis, please join us on Telegram, Twitter, and all of our social medias, which are on www.zebu.com.
absolutely.
Thank you for
Hope.
joining in.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. Real pleasure having you on our podcast, Raj. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time with another special guest, and until then, bye bye.